Hey bosses, real quick before we get started, I want to let you know about our sponsor, Indeed.com. They are the #1 job search and job posting platform out in the US. We'll tell you more about them during the break. Welcome to the Invest Like a Boss podcast.
I'm Sam Marks.
And I'm Johnny FD. We're self-made entrepreneurs who invest our own money and use modern technology to invest like a boss.
Join us each week for exclusive interviews with our network of modern investors, business owners, and multimillionaires to discover new ways to invest our hard-earned cash.
Hey bosses, this is Johnny FD, and welcome to episode 151 of Invest Like a Boss podcast. I'm still here in Aragon Bay, Sri Lanka. Sam, where in the world are you?
Hey guys, I'm here in clammy South Carolina. It's summertime, but I'm at peace. I'm in the new community where I bought the house. Not moved in yet, but making all the arrangements for it, and I'm really excited.
Nice. So, are you renting a place in that community, or how's that working?
No, I'm living in my parents' basement, Johnny. Thanks for asking.
Oh, nice, classy, bossy.
Yeah. I was supposed to be moved in by now, but they are building, the people that we bought the house from are building a new house. And with COVID, that house has gotten delayed. So my move-in date has been pushed from September to the end of October. But I'm here buying all the furniture, doing some landscaping work and stuff. It's, I'm nesting, buddy.
So you're kind of doing them a favor by letting them stay, right? Like legally, you're not obligated to let them stay.
Absolutely. Yeah. I kind of used it as negotiating leverage. Basically said, hey, we want it at this price with that extra lot. But if you can do that, we'll give you an extra 2 months to live in it rent free. And they took it, which is good. But the value of that to me right now is so significant because it's COVID. I want to be out of the apartment. I want to be out of my parents' basement. I want to be out of hotels. I want to be in a house. So really, I probably would have been willing to pay an extra $5,000 or $10,000 just to get in straight away.
Yeah, wow.
All hindsight.
So, how far is your parents' place from your new property?
Man, it's probably a 15-minute walk or a
perfect.
5-minute golf cart ride. Like, we're going to go buy a golf cart. I got electric scooters in here. I got a retro motorcycle. Everyone just rides around in golf carts and drinks wine and has their dog in the golf cart. It's a super cool community. I love it already.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And actually that's the perfect buffer distance, because if you were too close where they can just walk by, and just drop by, within a block, that's a little bit too close for comfort. But that 5-minute buffer, it does give you a little bit more private space.
Yeah, and it's perfect. It's like the perfect distance where they drive by and drop off cookies and apple pie, have a glass of wine, and then we part ways for the night. But Johnny, I've been watching your story, of course, talking to you each week about your experience in Sri Lanka. And I think you and I are always drawn to a little bit more of the quieter sides of life and the quieter places. And this place, in comparison to all the other places I've stayed and lived in the USA, yesterday morning, I got up at 7 a.m. I was at the golf course at 7:15 hitting range balls, and I teed off at 7:30. It cost $17 to play 9 holes with a cart in this mountain golf course. And I had the whole course to myself. It was so magical. Shot my best round of golf ever. And I was home by 8:55, finished with golf with a coffee and doing some work on the porch. It was amazing. This morning I got up, it's now 8:40 here. I got up at 7. I did yoga on the patio and I went paddleboarding out on the lake, pristine, beautiful mountain lake. And I'm just out there in the middle of the lake by myself. It's like, dude, I think I've cracked it. I think this was amazing. Really good decision. Yeah.
What's funny is I'm here, this, beautiful place, surf paradise, and I cannot stand the noise sometimes. There's just traffic. I mean, where we live is actually pretty quiet, but then you have random things like the mosque plays their call to prayers like 5 times a day, starting at 4:30 a.m. And then the other night, the neighboring hotel had a party, and they were blasting techno music until 4 a.m. And I was laying in bed thinking like, oh man, I can't stand this. And then the funny thing is, I remember I was listening to it for a bit and I was like, you know what, this is actually really good music. I just don't want to hear it when I'm trying to sleep at 4 a.m. And I no
Right.
longer appreciate it. Like when I was 19, I loved it. I loved going to all night raves until 6 a.m. What Bill Perkins talked about, which he still did in his 40s and 50s with Dan Bilzerian. But it's something that I'm just so over, and I just want to be in a quiet place. So maybe moving to a retirement community is the key. It's actually retiring early.
Yeah. And hey, I'm retired and I'm 35. So age, it doesn't really matter. We got some youngsters in here, but listen, next time you're in the States, you got to come check it out. We've been saying it, since we started recording this podcast, that I wanted to get you here to check it out. And I really do think that this is a spot. This is definitely a spot for people like you and me in the US. There's other places outside that we like, but spending time here in the US is really, really high quality. Very high quality. And it all goes back to the Bill Perkins episode. Like you said, as you get older, things change. And I'm reading a lot of philosophy right now, going back to, what the Greek philosophers said 2,000-3,000 years ago. And it all ties in. It's all about doing less, acquiring knowledge, acquiring wisdom, not rushing through life, and all these qualities of life that you and I are kind of slowly discovering on our journey in investing, but also around the world.
Well, speaking of the journey, I think I stumbled upon location arbitrage and all the benefits of it. But I feel like the rest of the world, especially in the US, they're seeing the benefits of it now. Even just leaving the big cities like New York and San Francisco and having a mass exodus to smaller towns and places, like where you are, where the cost of living is so much lower. There's less traffic, there's less headache. You get more open space, you get nature, and you get it for a quarter of the price.
And you get, in my opinion, depending on what you're looking for, you get better people. Right. The problem with expensive places is there's expensive people, and expensive people typically live a life of expectations instead of appreciations. There's definitely networking benefits being in expensive places, but that's not what I'm looking for right now. I'm looking for good conversations, wholesome people, good hospitality, good conversations. And that's what I find here 100%.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. And nowadays, in 2020, I mean, even starting a few years ago with the ability to work online, packages being delivered really worldwide now and being able to buy everything, really wherever you are, we no longer have all the downsides of living in a small town and being cut off from all the good things.
Yes, completely agree. And there's more and more interesting things popping up in all the small towns across the USA. Great boutique coffee shops, co-working spaces, CrossFit gyms. Like you can go to these towns that have basically nothing in them, and that's like those are the pillars of that town. It's like when you go to Ireland, you walk across Ireland or anywhere in Ireland, you find these small towns that only have a pub and a church. That's it. People cook all their food. They drive 30 minutes to find a grocery store or a restaurant, but there's a church and a pub in every single one of those small towns.
Yeah, I think it's because, maybe entrepreneurship is growing, but also just everyone's more connected now. So it used to be possible that someone lived in a small town and didn't even know what CrossFit was, or, didn't care. Now, or, didn't really, never even had good coffee or cared about, nice ambience and kind of that vibe of a chill coffee shop. But now I feel like even people in smaller towns are so well connected. They have Instagram, they have Pinterest, so they see what's nice and they're like, oh, why can't we bring that here?
100%. Yeah, that's exactly it. And also a lot of these people that grew up there went into the cities, may have done well and decided they want to go home, but my hometown's missing this or that. And then they decide, well, I'm just going to build that business there and I go back and be able to utilize it, but also bring it to that town and enjoy the town more.
Yeah, I like it. So I don't blame the people leaving the big cities. I think especially places like New York, people have known it was overpriced and that there was a lot of headaches. There's traffic, there's crazy people. It's just that the upsides were so much higher than the downsides that people accepted it. They're like, yeah, I know it's a piece of crap sometimes, but great restaurants, great theaters, great, networking, just lots to do. And now that everything's shut, they just see the downside. They just see the cramped spaces. They just see the crazy people. They just see, the high cost of living, and they realize, hey, let's make a move. Let's give this a shot. And I don't think people are going to go back anytime soon. What are your predictions?
Well, there's definitely debates on both sides. I've been a firm believer that remote work is going to be an increasing part of the global workforce, that the digital nomad movement is going to increase even for families as education becomes increasingly online. And on the other side, a lot of people think that COVID's going to pass and people are going to forget all about it and everyone's going to rush back into the cities. And there's certainly an aspect that industries are usually centered around cities, and a lot of that super ambitious people are going to tend to still want to be centralized in a city. But I think increasingly people are going to absolutely be moving out of high cost zones that don't add a tremendous amount of lifestyle benefit. So if you're a surfer and you love San Diego, you might stay in San Diego. It's a great place to live, but San Diego is more of it's a big town, but it's more of a lifestyle town, right?
Yeah.
So New York, Chicago, like some of these big cities, LA, where there's big, like lots of crime, lots of political unrest in different ways. Yeah, I think people are going to be moving out of these for a long time coming. Keep in mind, like right now, New York, real estate transactions are down like 60%. And a lot of that's because they can't show properties. But on the reverse side, the Hamptons, property transactions are up 200%. Right. So people are going out of the city. They still have access to New York if they need to, but they're going to live outside the city. So we just did a poll in the Boss Lounge. You guys can check it out, where we polled everyone. We asked them this question. We said, if you were making or are making $150,000 a year and have the ability to work remote, what would your preference be? And the options were live in a big city most of the year, live in a small city like Boulder or Chiang Mai most of the year, or live outside the city in a suburb most of the year, or be a digital nomad and mix it up between those preferences throughout the year. And overwhelmingly, people said that they would be more of the digital nomad and basically be location independent most of the year, which was really interesting. And yeah, Johnny, now that you're in your late 30s, where would you fall into that? I didn't see your vote.
Well, what's funny is I remember there wasn't an option for me where I want to be. So there's so many benefits of being a digital nomad or being location independent. And we'll get into the cost benefits, the tax benefits, but a big part of it is just being able to see the world and have unique experiences. And it's like I'm traveling full time, yet I'm getting the benefits of being home and saving money as well. It's weird. I think it's kind of this weird gray zone hack that I'm really fortunate to have fallen into, but I think it's going to close in the next few years. I think the tax breaks are going to end up going away. I think the super low cost of living in places like Chiang Mai, Thailand, or these kind of undiscovered places, the prices are going to even out. I mean, it's kind of like the EU. Once every country goes to the euro, and there's easy travel within the countries, prices kind of just end up reverting to the mean, and prices kind of go up everywhere. It doesn't make sense that there's these little hotspots in the world that have amazing nature, amazing food, amazing people, but rent is $400 a month for a luxury apartment. It just doesn't make sense. And being there, we get a crazy tax break. Like we can still earn US dollars. It's one of those stories we're going to tell our kids, or we're going to talk about in the Boss Lounge 10 years from now. But like, hey, remember when, a savings account paid 15% interest, or like, treasury bonds paid, like 9% interest. Like it doesn't really exist anymore.
Remember those years in Thailand and Ukraine when we were living off of $1,000 a month, but making 15,000 through our U.S. sources
and not getting taxed on it? Yeah.
Yeah. But I do think that the amount in the population, the percentage of the population that is actually able to do this in a meaningful way is so minute still. I always overestimate the amount of people that are doing this because you and I are doing it.
Yeah.
But
I mean, on one hand, yeah, like on one hand, like our friends are mostly location dependent already. So we do have that bias, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure most jobs can be done remotely. And not, I've realized not everyone's meant to be an entrepreneur, and not everyone should be an entrepreneur, but everybody, I would say, a big percentage, I don't know if it's 20, 30, 40, 50, or 80% of people, can work remotely. Most people we know aren't, physically manufacturing anything anymore. I mean, the US hardly even has that industry anymore. People do everything from a laptop. And if you could do it from a laptop in Silicon Valley or in New York, why can't you do it from a laptop in Chiang Mai or Sri Lanka?
Yeah, I think though that most of the people, 100%, that a lot of new quote unquote digital nomads are emerging today because of COVID and just remote workers. But most of the people in the US, my buddies in the US that are now able to work remote, they're not going overseas. They're like, man, I'm going to move from Chicago to like the lake, like 30 minutes up to the lake, like suburbs, or I'm maybe thinking about going out to Boulder, Colorado, like to them, people in their mid 30s, I think, that have never really been abroad and now have the ability to work remote, to go over to say like Chiang Mai is still such a foreign conquest, right?
Yeah.
And people get rooted, people get rooted, they get houses, they get cars, they get networks around them, they get, they're living close to their family. And to go and do a year abroad it's less, I just think it's less practical. I think you and I are actually more comfortable abroad just because that's where that's basically how we created ourselves, right? That's
I do think that the only way people will be comfortable moving abroad is if they first or decide to do it, tangentially, I guess, tangentially, is start focusing on minimalism. Like if I had a U-Haul full of stuff, there's no way I would be living abroad. But the fact that I travel carry-on only means that even though tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. I'm moving cities, I'm moving 3.5 hours away, which in the U.S. is quite a big move. It's at least moving cities, sometimes even moving states. I haven't packed anything yet, and I'm not worried because I know I just have a carry-on bag, so I can just spend 20 minutes and throw everything in there, and it makes my life so much easier. The fact that everything is online, everything's in the cloud, I don't stress. My MacBook Air finally broke after 7 years. I've been lugging around that 2013 MacBook Air. Finally broke. I'm in Sri Lanka on the East Coast in a tiny little surf village, but within 4 days, I managed to get a brand new 2020 MacBook Air sent to me. I didn't have a backup at all because my external hard drive happened to also be shot. So I just had to reinstall everything. But because most things are connected to my Gmail or my iCloud, I logged in and 90% of things are there. I just had to re-download Zoom, re-download Hearthstone, and a couple other things. But I didn't lose any documents or anything. Everything was still there.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful, and that's a good point too, because I think again, a lot of people, I know from experience that it's an uncomfortable feeling when you're paying rent or mortgage here and living abroad and paying elsewhere. And I didn't have that until last year. I had nothing in the US and living abroad was super easy. But as soon as I came to the US and I was paying $2,200 a month for an apartment and $1,000 a month for a car lease, and then I went abroad, every day I was in Lithuania, I'm like, oh, this sucks. Like I'm paying double rent, double everything, even though everything in Lithuania was dirt cheap. It was still like this nuisance and thorn in my ass. It was like, I'm double paying for everything right now. So I think to make that experience the most comfortable and most pleasurable, you gotta get rid of all of your liabilities, as much of your liabilities as possible.
Yeah, I mean, definitely don't be paying double rent. I mean, if the only thing I would even consider paying is for a storage unit, just and even just for a year, just to and I almost guarantee that in a year you're going to go back and you're going to get rid of 99% of the things in the storage unit anyways, realizing you didn't need it. But it's kind of an easy transition to kind of put everything there first. And maybe if you really want to keep your, your Google Fi number or something to if you're gonna be traveling
Yeah.
quickly and you want to keep your number, go ahead and do that. But even that, I'm like, why would I pay 40, 50, 60 bucks a month for Google Fi, for 3 gigabytes of data when I can put in a local SIM card here in Sri Lanka for, 15 bucks and get 60 gigs of 4G.
Yeah, if you're staying in places longer term like you, I think there's no need to. Me, I'm a little bit quicker to move about, and I love just getting off the plane and crossing the border, and my phone it's already working, connected.
Yeah.
Emails coming in. It's great.
Yeah.
T-Mobile, baby, global data.
So there's
I'll ever give them.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of hacks and tips and tricks for actually, traveling and living overseas. But let's talk about some of the actual benefits of it. And then let's talk about kind of the big point of this episode about the foreign investments. But regardless if you're, just staying at Airbnbs, hotels, or local apartments, there are huge tax breaks and benefits and cost of living benefits, especially for Americans, but really for anyone of any country where you're paying taxes. But let's start with Americans because that's what we have experience with.
For sure. So first one's got to be taxes.
Yeah. And this is something I didn't really think about because when I first moved, I wasn't making any money. If you're making less than 10 grand a year, you basically don't have to file. And that was a nice little break. But then once I started, earning money, I realized, hey, as long as I stay out of the country for 330 days of the year and only go home to visit friends and family for 35 days or less, I qualify for something called the Foreign Earned Income Exclusion, which gives us $107,000 tax-free per year. There's some caveats to it, but no federal income tax for up to $107,000 a year. And it keeps going up every year. That's insane. Right there, if even if you just make, on just that amount, the potential savings is like 30 grand, which is
it's ridiculous.
And that's like how much I spend the whole year living abroad, including my flights. So it's like basically the government is saying, hey, you don't want to, you're not here most of the year. No worries. We'll pay for your flights. We'll pay for all your food and your accommodation and all your travel, whatever you want to do. You get 30K a year for free. Do whatever you want. Have fun.
God, I was thinking about how much money I need to make right now to support my lifestyle. Because last month I spent $16,000.
Oh,
yeah, it's expensive here in the USA, Johnny. This month I'll spend less because I'm living in my parents' basement, but I typically average out about 10,000, right? So when I'm in the US, that means I need to make what? I need to make about 13 to 14,000 a month, right? Let's just say I had a paycheck. I need a $13 to $14,000 a month paycheck. So I need to make over 150,000 a year. But that's if I'm paying taxes. But if I'm not paying taxes on that, then you can just make 10 grand. And then also you're not living in the US, which probably means more than likely, unless you're living in Singapore, Hong Kong, Paris, London, Munich, a couple other cities, you're living less expensively than you would be in the USA. So you can make a lot less as well.
Yeah.
But just to add on to Johnny's point, foreign earned income tax exclusion also gives you a housing credit. And if you have a spouse, which I know you don't yet, Johnny, but if you have a spouse, they can also make the same. And so basically, you can arrange it in all different types of ways. Basically, John, if you had a lot of earnings, you could pay your spouse that much, half of it. And so basically as a household, you can make 250,000 tax-free between the tax credits and the housing allowance. That's right.
That is crazy. I mean,
I know people out there salivating right now.
Yeah. I mean, because especially if you're an entrepreneur and you have your own business, why not have some of those 1099s go to your wife? And
right.
Yeah, that's a great hack.
Mm-hmm. So there you have it.
Yeah.
No, that's a big one. And I think next year also, I haven't been able to take advantage of that for the last 4 years 5 years since, because I haven't had earnings, but next year, once Barcelona set up, my plan is to live there, and I should be able to start taking advantage of it again.
Okay, I like it. So 330 days a year out of the US. The reason why the government gives us this tax break is it makes logical sense. We're not in the US, we're not using the roads, we're not using the infrastructure, we're not using the services, so why pay tax on it? So it makes sense, and I hope this tax break doesn't go away. But my fear is, as the world gets more internationalized and it becomes easier to live abroad and work abroad, that they might just look at it and say, oh, there's all this money we left on the table. Let's screw people and just stop giving this tax credit, because it's a perk. It's not like a human right, I guess. But
I worry about that. I worried
never really had
it's
much say in that, anyways. Yeah, it's a human right to pay taxes. But here's a caveat for those who aren't familiar. We still have to pay state taxes. So if you live in California or New York or anywhere else that has a state tax, especially a high one, the $107,000 tax credit doesn't apply to it. So instead of paying 30-40% to the Fed and then another 10% to California, now you're just paying the 10% to California, so it's not as bad. But what I did and what I would recommend to everyone else is, especially if you don't plan on moving back to that high tax state when you're done nomading and done traveling, just move, before you start. And my tax accountant, she told me it's actually good to even file a partial year move. So if you move in, October, file that year with a 2-month tax credit. You won't get that much money back, but at least the state knows that you've left. So I moved to Texas. That's the state I plan on residing in if, and when I move back to the US full time and I stop traveling and living abroad. But Texas is a tax-free state. Florida is a tax-free state. There's a ton of them. And why keep paying California for services that you're not using? And especially if you're not planning on living there in the future.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't, which is, the state tax stuff is finicky, and you gotta be careful and plan that well. And for everyone that is outside the US, this whole thing might sound funny to you, but the reason why there is this loophole to begin with is because the USA taxes people on global income. So if you're from Britain or if you're from Australia, wherever, and you're living abroad and making money while living abroad, you're not going to owe tax in your home countries, I believe, anyways. There's already major benefits if you're not American to be living this lifestyle and living abroad and making money from your home country. Don't fact check me on that 100%, but I'm very certain that's true.
Yeah, and it is true. And for other countries, a lot of times they don't have to pay any tax, but what is recommended is to find a very low cost tax country to, as a, so for Americans, just file in the US and continue and use these tax breaks. But as a non-American, don't go 6 years without filing taxes anywhere. Find a place like Estonia, or some other country with either, 0 or 1% tax, and just file there every single year. And that way you can tell your home country, like, no, I haven't been skipping out. Look, I filed my tax returns for the last 6 years through Estonia or through XYZ country. And that way you're kind of safeguarded in case the IRS comes back with an audit.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good strategy. One other thing to mention on the foreign earned income tax exclusion, what Johnny's talking about is the absolute measure, which is the 330 days you need to be outside the U.S. There's also one called the Bonafide foreign resident, which it's basically abstract, but it says that you just need to be able to prove that your main residence is not in the USA. So that's actually the one that I'm planning to do next year in Barcelona, where I'll probably spend 6 months in Barcelona, but I might still spend 3 months or 90 days in the USA. visiting family and things. So as long as you can prove, hey, I have a resident there, I have a cell phone, gym membership, that's my main base of life. You can spend more time in the USA. It's just not as cut and dry. So Johnny, getting into your, what you might end up doing, buying a place in Sri Lanka, that actually might work for you. And if you wanted at that point, you could spend more time in the USA.
Hey bosses, I want to tell you about this week's sponsor, Indeed.com, the #1 job site in the world, because Indeed gets you the best people fast. So right now, there is a huge movement of remote work, and if your business is hiring, you have the potential of reaching people across the US for your job. But either way, if you're hiring locally or remote, you only have to pay for what you need, and you can pause your account at any time, and there's no long-term contracts. Unlike other sites, Indeed gives you full control and payment flexibility over your hiring. So right now, Indeed is offering our listeners a free $75 credit to boost your job post, which means more quality candidates will see it fast. Try Indeed out. The free $75 ad credit at Indeed.com/ILAB. That's ILAB. This is the best offer available anywhere. Go right now to Indeed.com/ILAB. Terms and conditions apply. Offer valid through September 30th, 2020. Yeah, and definitely talk to your tax accountant. Actually, don't talk to your tax accountant. Talk to a expat tax accountant who deals with this stuff, because it is complicated. To be honest, it's not that cut and dry. But speaking of living overseas and investing overseas, it's funny that you have mentioned your Phuket condos a few times in past episodes, and I honestly never really cared that much to dive deep into them, and yet. Now I'm in that same predicament where I'm in Sri Lanka. I see this fancy brochure for the new Duset Thani that's being built, and the rates for as an investment just keep going up, and I got so excited that I put down a $5,000 deposit. It's refundable until I go see the place, but now I want to dive in. I want to ask you about your investments, and I want to discuss this one.
Well, I'm excited to hear about this place that I'm going to be able to frequent anytime I go to Sri Lanka. So I'm all about you buying it. Don't do any due diligence. Just put the money down and send me over the keys.
Okay. Same with your Phuket places. Speaking of which, are they actually built yet?
Yeah, so I'll give you the status update on those. There's two properties that I've invested in Phuket specifically. For longtime listeners, this will probably sound familiar, but one of them is already built. It was finished about a year and a half, about 2 years ago now. That's in Surin Beach. Yeah, so Surin Beach is basically just north of Kamala, which is just north of Patong, and the other one's down south. Okay. The other one was actually in Kamala. And this one is like, man, this was like the works, Himalaya, Kamala is like this massive 600 room resort, multi-level complex. And that one I did like you, put down a deposit, end up paying 30% in different stages. And they were 2 years behind development schedule. And end up spending the whole last year in legal conflict with them, just trying to get my money back. Because every time I go down, you email them and they're like, and you get this bullshit, right? You get some Italian guy that just picks up the phone and just lies to you about the status of everything. And then I send a friend in Phuket to go look at it, and like, they haven't even broke ground yet, dude.
Wow.
Like, okay. So that one, long story short, that ended. I got my money back, but it cost me about $4,000 or $5,000 in legal fees to fight it, and a lot of stress over the last year. But I've gotten all my money back out of that. I ended up getting about $70,000 back. But that one doesn't look like it might not ever finish. It might not ever finish. And that's the story here, is when you buy pre-construction, as I've done I got 3 places in Chiang Mai and 2 in Phuket. All 5 of those were pre-construction. 4 of them ended up well, and 1 of them was a failure. And that's part of the risk you take when buying pre-construction.
Yeah, makes sense. And also, you know, the place might look great and brochure, but once it's built, it might be shoddy quality. It might be, you know, crappy furniture. And then what do you do, right?
Exactly. And man, there's when you buy something that is built, there's a bit of certainty to that. When you buy something that's pre-construction, to your point, you don't know what you're getting. I learned a lot about like just the placement of where you want your condo to be. Like you don't want your condo or your unit to be next to an elevator, because if you get some really annoying elevator or you get a noisy floor, they're like in Siri, you know, Siri in Chiang Mai, right?
Mm-hmm.
Johnny, if you're one of those units that are across from the elevator, it sucks, man. That beeping starts going off early in the morning. People are standing there. The walls are thin that if people are standing out by the elevators, you can hear their entire conversation at 6 a.m. So little things like this, there's an element of risk when buying pre-construction. Also pricing. You know, one of the big reasons to buy pre-construction is you're getting a discount, right? You're getting 20% off of what prices will be. I can tell you, all of the places I've bought in Thailand, I bought pre-construction thinking I was getting a 30% discount. And it's true that I did get a discount to what a lot of people paid going up to the finalization of that building in different stages. But there's no way I could sell those places now, which is still 6-7 years later, for the same price that I bought them for. Maybe I could get the same, but I'm definitely not getting an increase on those properties. So just because you buy pre-construction doesn't mean you're going to get a discount. You know, there's too many other variables that depend on the market and timing and things like that.
Yeah. And as far as an investment, have you been getting checks from it? And has it actually, you know, like if you were really going to calculate kind of the cash on cash returns, what do you think they would be?
Okay. So put aside the one that was a failure, but I at least got my money back. Big learning experience. But that was one of those programs that was like 7% guaranteed for 5 years. You know, I did it top to bottom with an attorney, did the due diligence, etc. And so that one's gone. I got the money back. It's out. So the other one in Phuket's 6th Avenue. The funny thing with this one was I literally did the deal over 5 mojitos and a handshake at a bar in Phuket with a developer. It was the stupidest thing you could possibly do. But I basically just had my exit and I was like trying to make moves. But you know, it was with a credible guy that I had a really good feeling about. It was a Thai, you know, half Thai, half Belgian guy. I was the first buyer in the building. They hadn't broke ground. All they had was the concept and the plans. I was the first person to buy a unit. Got a sweetheart of a deal, and they finished that one on time. But this was another one of those rental programs, Johnny, 7%, but they only offered it for 2 years. Well, what happened in those first 2 years was other developments started building around that building, and they tore up all the roads. There's no paved roads. It was nasty, muddy roads, and the tour buses couldn't get in. And in fact, the roads were flooded so often that people couldn't get in. So the first 2 years development, there was basically no one staying there. And so what happened to that 7% guarantee? Well, they emailed everyone. They're like, you know, because of X, Y, and Z, it was out of our control, and you know, we're not getting paid these 2 years, but also we can't pay you. So you know, we're not taking one. So everyone's like, what the fuck are we gonna do? Like sue the building, you know, and they're gonna go bankrupt. They have to pay out, stuff like this. So everyone's just like, wow. I assume everyone just did like me. It was just like sitting on their hands, like whatever. Like this was sort of foreseeable. But since happy to report that, you know, that I was hoping to get 8% a year on the investment. And after the first 2 years, you know, there is a ramp up period with these places. The first year they launch and open up, it's not going to be massive. You know, you got to get those reoccurring people that are coming back every year, just like any business. And right now, I think last year, even with COVID, knocking off 2 of their prime months, you know, February, March, it still paid out about 5%.
Okay.
And overall, I'm really happy with it, man. I have to say, I'm really happy with. It's like, it's zero maintenance, zero thought. I don't think about it at all during the year. Just get a check at the end of the year, basically.
Nice. And are they paying you into like a Thai bank account in Thai baht or into US dollars?
Yeah, it's another benefit. It's pretty flexible. Originally, when I bought the place, I'd said, "How are you paying out?" And he's like, "Well, just let me know." I'm like, "Can I come down to Phuket and just get my payout in cash?" He's like, "Yeah, it's like just whatever, just let me know." I haven't done that yet, but that was kind of the original idea. Is I would like fly down to Phuket, use the place for a couple of weeks, grab the cash, be like whatever amount cash, enough to live on in Thailand for a couple of months. And just live off that cash for a couple months.
Okay, that'd be fun.
But
let's go down the suitcase.
To answer your question, yeah, more specifically, it's they just pay out Thai baht to whatever account.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. But okay, and how many days a month are you allowed? I mean, or a year are you allowed to use the property? Or could you stay there the whole year if you wanted to?
Yeah, you could stay there the whole year if you want, if you're not putting it into the rental pool. So the way this is set up, it's like, I'll leave a link in the show notes, called 6th Avenue Phuket. It's proper resort, rooftop pool, massive gym, restaurant, close to the beach type of thing. So they rent it out as a hotel. Typical units like studios on up to kind of small 2 bedrooms, right? Like you'd find in most hotels. Or most resorts anyways. And so most people are buying these as investments. So they're buying it and then they're putting it in their rental pool. You're allowed to use it, I believe, 3 weeks a year. And you can, it can be you using it. You can let me use it. You can let family use it. And the only thing is that it can't be during high season. So high season in Phuket is January to March. Okay. So you can use it outside of that. And when you use it, you have to pay like the cleaning fees, which ends up being like, I don't know, 10 or 15 bucks a night type of thing. Okay. You can use it longer. Like you can use it throughout the regular season. And I think you get 50% off the rates. So it's still, if you want to use it high season, it's still a good deal. And you can use it all year. You just wouldn't put it in the rental pool. You just keep it. You could live in it. You could live in it. Okay. You could rent it out yourself. You could do whatever you want.
So if you were to sell it today, do you think you can get all your money back? Do you think it went up? Like, how do you think that appreciated?
I don't think I could get my money back. The second market for these type of resort condos that you own is not high. You would have to, like, people wouldn't buy these to live in it, right? They're not like big, nice 2-bedroom apartments you would live in. They're something you go and you vacation in for a week or something. So people are buying these as an investment. And you would have to, everything goes back to the return, right? So if you're only getting a 3 or 4% return, people are going to extrapolate that and figure out what they're willing to pay for it. So yeah, I think if there was, 3 or 4 years of historic returns that showed this was making 7 or 8%, then it would justify the price that I paid. But until that goes up, and that's the value proposition, right? Is that over the course of a decade, rent goes up, more customers are coming back, and the returns continue to grow. And at that point, as long as the building's not old and decrepit, you should be able to resell it. But I haven't heard of anyone really having much success in reselling these type of places on a second market.
Yeah, so these are kind of my concerns on buying this place is, even though you like your properties, like cash on cash, you would have made way more money investing it somewhere else. And in the US, I try to find some other programs that are similar to see how they did. In the US, there's the Hard Rock hotel in San Diego that actually had a program like this. And I was reading some forums on how people did. And, it was a great concept, to own, a room at the Hard Rock Cafe or the Hard Rock Hotel. And a lot of people liked it for the benefit of being an owner and being able to have the cachet and being able to go there, on a weekend or something and tell everyone, tell all the girls in the pool that they own one of the units or they're part owner of the hotel. So there's all these perks, like, you get access to like the owner's lounge and all this stuff. But the actual returns, weren't that high. And a lot of it was just because, the hotel had overestimated how much they were going to make, how much they were going to pay out. as they do, right?
Sounds like a common story.
Yeah. And this one in particular, they said that, the management was mismanaging funds. Another example is the Ritz-Carlton Residences, which are actually all over the U.S. They have them in a few of them in Florida. They have them, Beverly Hills. They basically all over the U.S. And it's a very similar program as well, where you can live there full time, or you can put into. I believe you can put into the rental program. Not really sure, but it also seems like the secondary market for them, aren't that great. And both places have super high carrying costs, where the HOA on
super
them,
high,
yeah, because it's a full service hotel, they're like $1,500 a month.
It's it's a tough investment decision, right? Because these are not. All right, Ritz-Carlton's a bit different. You could live in that. Like if you're ever just like, you know what, I don't want to rent it out. I'm not making that much money. If it's in a good location, yeah, you could live in a Ritz-Carlton, but you don't want to live in my resort in Phuket. And I would gather that you probably don't want to live in this place in Sri Lanka where you're staying, because you don't want to live in a hotel. You want to vacation there for a week or 2 weeks and not worry about things. But if you were staying there for 3 months, I mean, you have somebody new checking into you every other day. It's annoying.
Yeah.
You're living with vacationers. So if you have to decide on, is this a place that if you're doing it strictly for money, I haven't seen any of these have been a good value, or anyone that's been screaming that they've done really well with these. I think you'd actually do better in like in my places in Chiang Mai, that style where you can rent it long term. Yeah, I can make 7 or 8% if I rent those all year, but also it's a nice place to live because it's not a hotel. Or there's like these Ritz-Carlton properties. If you could do it for like an alternative motive, like we're talking about living abroad and stuff, Ritz-Carlton has one that's also in St. Kitts, and you buy that place, or you buy fractional ownership in that, you get citizenship. And then you have citizenship, you have an investment, and you have a place that you can vacation. So then it starts making more sense, right? But in my experience, these investment resorts, they're kind of cool in concept. I did this one really as a learning experience, and also to have a place to be able to vacation or allow friends and family to use. And it served that purpose. So I would say that I'm happy with it. I can say that, but it's also not like a pillar of my investment portfolio, right? I'm not relying on that income. If this was 10% of my investment portfolio, I never would have done it. But there's benefits to it, but there can also be a lot that goes wrong. Like if you look at the two that I've done on this level, one's gone completely, head over. So, and that could have ended up really badly if I hadn't buttoned everything up with an attorney. I could, who do we know that had a total wipeout down in Koh Tao? Someone in our network made an investment down in Koh Tao. They put a $50,000 deposit down, and the developer just bounced.
Oh man.
So you really need to know who you're getting into business with. You need to have attorneys check this stuff. You need to look at, like, if you're interested in this place, Johnny, figure out who this developer is and how many other projects they have going on at once. And that was a big mistake that I made in this one. They had this developer. First off, it was a foreigner developing in Thailand, which that never smells right. Right? You have an Italian guy doing big property development in Thailand. I don't like that. But he also had 5 other projects down in Phuket and Samui going on at the same time, and none of them were completed. Yeah, that's massive risk, right?
Yeah,
that's what's happened. None of them are completed now. So there's little things a good attorney would know how to identify this stuff. Mine didn't look for that stuff, but we still did the paperwork well enough that we were able to get the money back.
Okay. Well, so the place I'm looking at, on paper, it seems great. And I'll have an attorney check it out before I actually pay for it, if I do go for it. But what I like about it is it's 7% guaranteed, but even during construction, which is something that normally I never hear about. And that gets rid of the risk of, what if it takes, 2, 3, 4 years for them to finish. They've already, not only have they broken ground, they have the whole foundation up already. So you can actually go to the 20th floor and you can see your exact, sea view. So all that's there. And it's developed by Duset Thani, which has a bunch of properties in Thailand, all, highly rated. So I know the company itself is good. And they're partnered with some big banks in Sri Lanka who's basically guaranteeing the amount, and they have a buyback guarantee at the end of the 7 years where they'll buy it back for 100% of your purchase price. So in theory, the reason why I've been interested in it is you can I can park my money there, get 7% from day one for the next 7 years, sell the unit back either at a premium if it's going for more, or for exactly how much I paid for it, and just have that the 7%, and I can use the place for 3 weeks a year for free with no cleaning costs, and very little blackout period. It's only during Christmas and New Year's.
3 months. 3 months a year?
No, sorry, 3 weeks a year.
3 weeks, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that all sounds very standard to. I feel like this model was sort of originated in Thailand, because I haven't found too many places where this is being offered, and in Thailand it's everywhere. And when I was looking through that Duset Thani, I was like, man, this all looks like it's a Thai. It's being developed in Thailand, but it's also because it's a Thai developer. But I would say, look, all that stuff sounds great. That's the reason why I invested. But in my experience, the contracts are baked with loopholes that force majeure, like if there's, a ungodly event like COVID, for instance, they can get out of this, a lot of these things, but really what they'll just, it's like the issue that I had where they built the building and then another developer tore up the roads, and they're like, what do you want us to do? Like, it's out of our control. And everyone just kind of capitulates. So I would, that even though they're a big developer with a good brand, I wouldn't rely on all those things. That's sort of a best case scenario, that all those things are going to be easy for you to execute on, like selling the property back after 7 years.
Yeah.
Now,
so the downsides and the reasons why I haven't fully committed yet is one, it's probably the worst possible time with COVID and not knowing if tourism is going to open back up. However, it's not horrible timing, because it's supposed to take them another year and a half to finish anyways. And hopefully by then tourism's back. Sri Lanka's a growing market. So I do think that, they would do well. And right now, a big part of it is I have $100,000 sitting in my account, and I don't know where to put it, because I don't, I think the stock market in the US is overvalued. Real estate in the US, I don't trust right now either. So it's kind of like this weird situation where I don't know where else to put that money. I would almost, rather trust it getting 7% here in Sri Lanka than, than risk it in the US. So it is kind of a weird situation.
Oh man, I feel like this or something similar is going to be great for you, because I think you're at the point now where you know where you want to spend time. Having a place abroad, in my experience, has been a fantastic experience. It's made me feel a little bit more anchored to that place. If you want to do the Bonafide foreign resident and spend a little bit more time in the U.S., owning a place abroad where you're going to spend, 3, 4, 5, 6 months a year makes sense. This also gives you a currency hedge. You're going to be making money in Sri Lankan dollars. You can go there and pick up the cash and spend it, but also you're not all in U.S. denominated U.S. dollar denominated investments. And if you're going to go and if you can spend a month there, like 3 weeks, you can squeeze into a month. I'm sure you just talk to them. If you enjoy spending time there, I think it's great. Or get a place like my place at the Syria in Chiang Mai, something a little bit more similar to that, where if you want, you could spend 5 months there, right? And you could rent it out the other 5 months, and it's a little bit more livable. But I think something like this will, I think you'll get a lot of value out of it if it's in a place like if you're set on Sri Lanka and you're happy to spend 4 or 5 months a year there, like I am in Chiang Mai. I think you'll really enjoy it. I think it'll be a good experience.
Appreciate it, buddy. I don't know if I don't think I'm gonna get the place. I won't.
I just talked you out of it somehow.
Yeah. I'm like, if Sam thinks it's a good idea, it's probably not a good investment.
Well, one other thing, man. This is hit home recently. So I just bought the place. I bought the place basically in Barcelona and USA at the same time. So now it's like 8 properties I own now. But dude, the carry cost and the carry bandwidth in the brain of the Thai properties, it's almost zero. Like I honestly don't even know who's paying like the water bills and electricity bills, and because it's such a small number. Like I think the receptionist is just paying it, and when I get back, she'll be like, "Oh, Sam, I paid, whatever." Dude, like the U.S. property, I just found out that all right, the POA is like one thing, and then I got to pay property tax, then I got to pay insurance. I just found out to water the lawn each month is like $400.
Oh my God. Why?
Because, like the sprinkler, the grass.
Oh
like,
God.
These are things I had no idea about, right? Like $400 between someone mowing it and watering it. Yeah.
You need to convert that into some gravel or something.
Oh yeah. No, I'm becoming a landscaping architect overnight. Like that stuff is all getting torn up. No chance. That's the type of thing. It's like you're in Chiang Mai and you're like paying a $400 water bill back home in the US. And you're like, oh, this is
yeah.
cool.
It's like it's not even 400 baht in Thailand. It's like, it's like $4 in Thailand a month.
Yeah. No. So this is the point, is like carrying a house in the Western world, especially in the US, a house, it's like, it's insane. It's bills coming in all the time. In Spain, it's a little bit better because you pay the property tax up front. I mean, you can argue if it's better or worse, but you pay basically a 10% transfer fee, which is like your property tax. And there's a little property tax each year, but it's small. It's like under $1,000. Okay. So that's a little bit better. But in Thailand, like my property in Phuket, I don't get any bills on that. I'm not even sure how it works. I don't get any bills, but at the end of the year, they're like, okay, you made X, $7,000, and you owe $1,400 in the sinking fund, common fees, whatever. They're like, do you just want us to deduct that from what we owe you? I'm like, yeah. And then they pay me out whatever the difference is. So I could fall asleep for a year and wake up and I didn't have to pay anything. I didn't have to think about that property. And that is just a beautiful thing, man.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you, like this home ownership in the US, it's a different, it's bills coming in everywhere. So I'm learning all this stuff now, but
yeah.
But the property ownership over there, you don't have property tax in Thailand. So
yeah,
it's nice. It's real nice.
Yeah. I was shocked when my parents told me that their water bill is $170 a month. And like they don't even have a lawn, and like my parents are super stingy with water too. Like they're taking like 3-minute showers, and it's insane. Like I'm paying $30 a month to live at a hotel, including Wi-Fi, electricity, water, gas, and weekly cleaning. And it's like the cost benefits of being abroad in a cheap country like Thailand or like Sri Lanka, or there's so many others, Eastern Europe, Ukraine, Poland. Mm-hmm. Arguably it's a higher standard of living in some ways, maybe not as luxurious or as, as convenient, having a huge house, but being able to live in the city center or a block from the beach and having someone come clean your house, or having someone, garden and clean the pool, and not have to worry about any of that, to me is such a huge benefit. I'm spending less than $1,500 a month on average living, around the world, traveling, seeing all these cool places. Some months I'm spending $800, and all that is going to my savings and my investments. So, that's how I have like an 80 or 90% savings rate. and not having to pay taxes on this. It's such a good deal that I encourage everyone to just try it out for a year. It's worth sacrificing, whatever's holding you guys back.
Yeah, God, 90% savings rate. That must be nice.
Yeah.
I do think one of the best feelings in the world is just being able to pack everything that you need into a backpack, and be able to work from a computer and just not have stuff around you, not have all this stuff that requires maintenance and taking care of and organizing and stuff. And just like, you just have so much time to think and just do what you want.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. Like, even if you just do it for a couple weeks a year, but I mean, obviously, like you, Johnny, you're doing it all year. It's hard to come back and start accumulating stuff like I'm doing now in the States. But yeah, I would definitely encourage everyone to try it out. It's a beautiful peace of mind that is hard to replicate.
Yeah. So I want to quickly answer one of the Patreon questions. If you guys haven't joined our Patreon group yet, we post our show topics as soon as we know who the guest is or what the topic is for the next week. And that way you can ask questions and we'll answer them on the shows. So this week, David Swanner asks, what are your personal pros and cons of nomading using Airbnb and short-term furnished rentals? Also, what circumstances would it make sense to buy a unit for your personal residence? Sam, you want to go first?
Sure. I think for me that all plays into itself, in that about 2 years ago, I just got burned out of not having a home and just nomading around Airbnb to Airbnb, hotel to hotel. I love that lifestyle, but at some point, like, something just triggered in me that said, I need a base. And so I think we discussed reasons why you might want to buy a place abroad or anywhere. But I think having a home base, they say a man's house is his castle. And I've really enjoyed the experience of ownership, getting off a plane in Chiang Mai and having a closet there and having a place that's basically maintenance free, headache free all year. So that when I'm not there, it doesn't, it's not costing me anything. And it's not weighing on my mind. So I think I think after some point you need to get a place, and you should have a place in your primary place. For me, that's Chiang Mai. Maybe it becomes Barcelona in the future.
Yeah, good answer. I would say, to add on to that, the main benefits of having a place, buying a place, is that certainty of knowing you have a place that you go back to, your stuff is there, that you don't have to think about it. And if you buy it right, there's the potential appreciation. You're hedging against rents, rent prices going up. But in most cases, in most of these areas, especially with condos, because foreigners usually cannot own land, we can only own condos. It's financially, it almost never makes sense. Like in Chiang Mai, the rent prices are so cheap that it just doesn't make sense to own, and it makes way more sense to rent a place. Another benefit is, if you're only there for 3 months a year, why pay for the place for 12? It financially makes way more sense to book a place and just pay for the months you're going to be there, and not double pay, whether it's in the US and abroad, or paying for a place in Thailand or Sri Lanka, the whole year when you're not going to be there. For me, I really love, staying places month to month, for 1, 2, or 3 months at a time, and having that flexibility of leaving or moving if I want. And financially makes so much sense. But for a while, I was also having that kind of conundrum of missing, a home base and things. The only thing that really helped that was I went to that Date with Destiny conference with Tony Robbins. And there I really, sat down for 7 days and thought, like, why do I need the certainty? Why do I need things? Why do I need stability in my life? And that $5,000 conference has helped, ended up saving me a lot of money, being happy, living on a bag and embracing the uncertainty and not having stuff. Because once you have a place, you will buy stuff, and stuff will end up owning you and dictating your life way faster than you expect.
That I completely agree with you.
Yeah. So hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Highly encourage everyone to take advantage of these tax breaks if you can. It is hard. It was a difficult journey for both Sam and I, and pretty much all the nomads that we've met. But it was worth it. Like financially, it's been the best thing I've ever done. I've been able to see the world, have all these cool experiences, and a lot of cool friends. And stress levels, living out of these short-term rentals monthly, my stress levels are almost zero. So I don't, I miss out on not owning, a bunch of stuff. I can't have 10 pairs of shoes. I can only carry around 2 or 3, but at the end of the day, it's worth it.
I agree. And I'll just add on to, outside of the tax benefits, just really encourage everyone to take advantage of this period of life, because COVID has been rough, but it has also given birth to a golden age in remote work and flexible workspace, flexible work habits, flexible living. So get out there. I think, as Johnny said, prices are going to equalize in places. There's just no way that Ukraine, Thailand, Sri Lanka, places like this are going to be this cheap forever. So get out there, enjoy it, work remote if you can for 2 weeks or for 2 years, and see the world and enjoy some great cultures and great places out there. And also wanted to thank everyone. Listen, we're almost 400 5-star reviews in the US, Johnny.
Ooh.
I think we're 10 away. So I really, we appreciate it. It's been a journey. And if you guys want to make our August, if we can get over 400, we'd be super, super appreciative.
All right. I love it. So guys, please hop on the podcast app, wherever you're listening. Search for Invest Like a Boss. Leave us a 5-star review. We really appreciate it. Patreons, we thank you so much. Keep those questions coming. The next topics are already in the Patreon group, so you can ask there what you want to hear. And, if you guys want to come hang out here in Sri Lanka, I may or may not have a place by this time next year. So we'll see.
Johnny, you need to get a place just so we can swap. We can swap stays at each other's. Right now, it's a bit one-sided.
I actually haven't stayed at any of your places yet, so
it's true, but the potential is there. So
okay, I love
next
it, buddy.
year, Barcelona, Chiang Mai, and South Carolina, buddy. We can we'll get in backpacks and just nomad around my places together.
Yeah. I tell you what. Anytime you want to come to Sri Lanka, I'll rent you a $10 a night place here.
Sounds lovely after this full year living in hotels in America.
All right, you're welcome, buddy. I'll talk to you later.
All right,
you guys.
Okay, see you, Johnny. See you, bosses.
Thanks for listening to the Invest Like a Boss podcast. Join our mailing list at investlikeaboss.com to get exclusive access to our insider investment folios and our private members forum.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends and leave us a review in the iTunes store. It helps more than you know. See you guys next week.